We've begun the story of Gadhi. It's very similar to the story of Lavana, of King Lavana, that we heard about way back in chapter 103 of section 3. Gadhi was a devotee of Lord Vishnu. He was granted a boon by Lord Vishnu, and the boon that Gadhi asked for was to behold the power of cosmic illusion, Maya. And as he was doing his ablutions one day, his body collapsed. He saw this happening, and his body was taken as dead by his relatives and was consumed on the funeral pyre. So one of the differences here, I think, between the story of Gadhi and Lavana is that Gadhi actually requested to see the power of this illusion, whereas King Lavana was unwittingly led into it. Vasishta continued, "O Ram, Gadhi, who still remained immersed in the river, then saw that he was in the region known as Bhuta Mandalam, as a fetus in the womb of a tribal woman. He was surrounded by filth and flesh in the body of that woman. In course of time he was born as her son. For a time he wallowed in his own excreta. He was dark in colour like his parents. He was well beloved in the family. Soon he grew up into a robust young man. He was a good hunter. He got married to a tribeswoman. He roamed the forest freely. He led a nomadic life, sometimes sleeping under a tree, sometimes hiding himself in a bush, and sometimes making a cave his abode. And he became a father. His children were as violent and wicked as he was." It's not said as such, but it's quite clear that Gadhi was of a very low caste, and in fact was what's referred to as an untouchable. He had a large family. He had numerous relations and friends. He grew old. He did not die, but one by one he lost all his friends and relatives to death. Disgusted, he left his native realm and wandered away to foreign lands. Aimlessly he wandered in many countries. One day, while thus wandering from one place to another, he entered a kingdom which was obviously very rich and prosperous. He was walking along the main road of the capital city of this kingdom. He saw in front of him a huge royal elephant which had been richly caparisoned. The royal elephant had a mission. The king who ruled over that kingdom had just died without an heir. In accordance with the custom, the royal elephant had been commissioned to find a suitable successor. It was looking for a suitable person, even as a jeweller might look for a precious gem. The hunter looked at the elephant for some time with a mixture of curiosity and wonder. The elephant picked him up with its trunk and quickly placed him on its own back. At that very moment there arose in that city a tumultuous sound of drums and bugles. The people everywhere exclaimed in great joy, "Long live the king! The elephant had chosen the king." Very soon the hunter was surrounded by the members of the royal court. The beautiful women of the court surrounded him and began to dress him and adorn him with princely garments and jewels. They garlanded him. They applied various unguents and perfumes. The hunter shone as a radiant king, and they crowned him while he was seated on a throne on the back of that very elephant. Thus a tribesman and hunter became the king of Kirapura. Thereafter he enjoyed all the royal pleasures and privileges. By and by, the very nature of his position taught him the art of ruling the kingdom. He became a well-known king named Gavala. Vasishta continued. Gavala the king, devoutly served by the maids of the palace and by his ministers, had totally forgotten his humble origin. Thus 8 years passed, and he ruled the kingdom justly and wisely, with compassion and purity. One day he roamed out of his inner apartments alone, and unadorned with regal dress and royal insignia. People who are conscious of their excellence ignore external adornments. Outside the palace he saw a group of tribesmen who were singing familiar songs. Quietly he joined them and also began to sing with them. An aged tribesman recognized him and, rising from the crowd, addressed him. O Catania, does the king of this place bestow good gifts and presents upon you in recognition of your musical accomplishments? Ah, I am delighted to see you. Who will not rejoice to meet an old friend again? Gavala ignored this, but the ladies of the royal household and the members of the court, who were watching from a distance, were shocked. The king quickly returned to the palace. But the royal servants and the members of the court had not recovered from the shock of the realization that their king was an unworthy tribesman, whom they would not even knowingly touch. They began to avoid him. They treated him as if he were a putrid corpse. So this king was clearly, originally, an untouchable. And such a person would have been avoided by people in the upper castes. And because he would have been regarded as a polluting influence, so much so that even if his shadow had been cast upon somebody, they would have to have undergone some kind of purification ritual because of the pollution. Thus, neglected by his ministers, servants and the ladies in waiting who used to adorn him, Gavala began to appear in his real form as a dark and ugly tribesman, hideous to look at, like a crematorium. Even the citizens avoided him and ran away at his very sight. He felt utterly lonely, though he was living in the palace surrounded by the people. He felt like a destitute person, though he was king. Even if he tried to talk to them, the people would not respond to him or answer him. The leaders of the community held council among themselves and began to talk. Alas, we have been polluted by the touch of this tribesman who lives on the flesh of dogs. There is no expiation for this pollution other than death. Let us raise a huge pyre and throw our sullied bodies into it, and thus purify our souls. Having decided thus, they gathered firewood, with which they built a huge funeral pyre. One by one they threw themselves into it. With all the elders thus having ended their lives, there was disorder and anarchy in the city. The King Gavala reflected, Alas, all this was brought about by me. Why should I continue to live? Death is preferable to life. For one who is dishonoured by the people, death is better than life. Thus resolved, the King Gavala calmly offered his body too into the fire. As fire began to consume the limbs of Gavala, Gadhi, who was reciting prayers immersed in the water of the river, regained his consciousness. At this stage, evening set in. Another day came to an end. It's difficult to ignore the social context here, and it'd be nice to think that the Yoga Vasishta was actually making a point. You know, this guy had been a good king, but once his origins were discovered, he was regarded as a polluting influence. But unfortunately, the point is that he was a good king is quite subtly made, and I suspect that traditional readers of the Yoga Vasishta would have been as shocked by this story as the people of the community and the palace, and would have sympathised with them rather than with King Gavala, who is also subscribing to their sensibilities, to their prejudices, by feeling that he's got to join them too on the funeral pyre. But that's not really the point of the story, it's just incidental, so I won't dwell on it any longer.